All right, so for the activity on the endocrine system, what we're going to be looking at is we are going to focus on the white blood cells. I did a very brief introduction on the cardiovascular system because they work so much better in focusing on them when we go through our lymphatic system. So I wanted you guys to hear the names initially, but I knew we were coming back to them when we got to this chapter. So now we are going to focus on those white blood cells. Now, just a quick reminder, white blood cells are your defenders. These are the ones that are going to find things that don't belong in your body, and they will systematically mark them. They will then learn everything they can about them. And then once they've learned about them, they will destroy them. And in the process of marking them, learning about them, and destroying them, we also build up antibodies, which are now going to be able to defend them, as well as what are called natural killer T cells, which will also work with the antibodies to destroy any foreign invader that gets into our system. So we have a very elaborate system of finding, tracking, identifying, and destroying things that don't belong in our bodies. What I want you guys to do is I want you to look at these white blood cells in a couple of different ways. So I want you to first go through the white blood cells, and I'm going to identify the white blood cells in the assignment that you guys will have for this week. But we talked about neutrophils, you have your basophils, your monocytes, and you're going to take a look at those white blood cells, and you are going to identify certain traits and aspects about them. And I will lay this all out in the assignment for you, so please don't feel like you have to write it down right this second. But I will give you a list of the white blood cells that you need to cover. And what you're going to do is you are going to look at some of the characteristics and features that make those white blood cells recognizable. Because we have different types of white blood cells because they are going to attack very specific things. Some of them go after parasites, some of them go after bacteria. Some of them are going to actually eat foreign bodies. And so you guys are going to pay attention to those different classes of white blood cells and give me some specifics. Now, the other part of the activity is I'm going to send slides and you guys are going to find the white blood cells on the slides. Now, this is a little bit tricky. So with the slide, you are going to look at a human blood smear. And on the human blood smear, you will see that there are 600 red blood cells to every 1 white blood cell. So initially tracking down the white blood cells can be a little bit difficult when you're looking at the slides, just because you might not immediately see one. And so keep in mind, 600 to 1 ratio, you might have to hunt a little bit to find the white blood cell. White blood cells are usually recognizable. Number one, they're larger than the red blood cells. So size difference should immediately set them apart. Also, when they're stained on the microscope slide, they stain a purple color. And so you have your pinkish to red blood cells, and then you will have this purple cell that is hanging out in the middle of everything. And it's going to be much larger than the red blood cells. The other traits and characteristics that you have with the white blood cells is that they are going to be known as agranulocytes or granulocytes. Now, if we break that word down a little bit, A is a prefix that we use to say or mean without. The granulo is going to indicate a grainy material within the cell, and cyte means cell. So when we talk about agranulocytes or granulocytes, what we're simply talking about is, do we have a cell that has grainy appearance to it, or does it lack a grainy appearance? Okay. So the agranulocytes would be without grains, and the granulocytes would have the grains. And the reason this is important is because when you look at the white blood cells underneath the microscope, you can actually see those grains within the cell itself. It will kind of look like speckling, like pepper flakes in the cell. And it can help you identify what type of white blood cell you are actually looking at. So the other thing that you can use to identify your white blood cells is the shape of the nucleus. In some of the white blood cells, you will have 5 lobes to the nucleus. Some of them only have 2 lobes. Some of the nuclei take up almost the entire space of the cell, and that's pretty much all you can see when you look at the cell. So this activity is just going to have you work through the different types of white blood cells, identifying some of the characteristics and traits that are featured with the white blood cells, and then just practicing being able to recognize them using the nuclei, the presence of grains or the lack of grains. And I would imagine for most people, this is something that you have never done before. And it's something that is a little bit of a process. So when you initially look at that first one, you might have the feeling of you don't know what you're looking at, but as you start looking at more and you see the different traits and characteristics coming through, then you can start setting them apart and you can start making the recognition of the different traits that you have within those white blood cells so that you are able to tell them apart from one another. So there are 2 things that I'm looking for with this particular activity. The first one is going to be the completion of the assignment, which I will type up and put in Blackboard for you, looking at the 5 types of white blood cells, identifying whether or not they are a granulocyte or an agranulocyte, identifying what specifically they target in our body. So what are they going to defend us against? And then the last piece is identifying or talking about what the nucleus looks like so that you can use that as something to be able to recognize or tell those white blood cells apart from each other. The other part, and this is going to happen one of 2 ways. If I am able to get microscopes to you, I'm going to send you a slide of a human blood smear with a microscope and have you find the white blood cells on the microscopes. And it's, again, takes a little bit, but you can take your phone and use the camera. And if you put the camera of your phone up to the eyepiece, you can snap a picture of what you're looking at in the microscope, and then you can email that to me. If we're able to do it in that method, I'm going to have you use the slide, find white blood cells, snap a picture of them, and then next to your picture when you email it to me, tell me what type of white blood cell you think you are looking at. If I'm unable to get the microscopes to you, I have some other slides that I will send to you, and we'll work through it that way, where I will just give you the picture and then you have to tell me what white blood cell you are actually looking at. I would much rather have you do the microscope one, just the technique of working with the microscope, having to find them, because like I said, it's not always easy. You put the slide on there and all you can see is red cells. You have to move it around until you are able to pick out the purple one and then focus in on that. So I would like to be able to do that. And we'll just see if it's possible. If not, I will just send you the pictures and you'll have to do an identification process based off the pictures that I send you. So those are the 2 things that you will need to complete for this particular chapter. And I will put that all into Blackboard for you, like I said, with the due dates, and then continue to make sure that you are checking back in Blackboard because you will have your reproductive system and your endocrine system coming up in the near future as well. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, comments, please email me at either the Sioux City Schools email. That will probably get you a faster response, but I am also checking the St. Luke's email on a regular basis, so you can email me that way as well. Take care.